The morning sun painted Fort Carson in shades of gold and shadow. Command Sergeant Major Robert Callahan stood at his office window, coffee growing cold in his hand. 35 years. That is how long he had worn this uniform. That is how long he had carried the weight of other men's lives. 35 years, and now 2 months until retirement. The thought sat heavy in his chest, not unwelcome, just heavy. On his desk, a stack of personnel files waited. Incoming transfers, new blood for the battalion. Most would be routine. Young officers fresh from their first assignments, eager, untested, full of textbook knowledge and empty of the hard wisdom that only combat could teach. Callahan had seen thousands of them over the decades. He could spot the real ones within minutes. The ones who would lead, the ones who would break, the ones who would do what needed doing when the shooting started and all the manuals became worthless paper. He picked up the top file. Captain Sarah Mitchell, 25 years old. The photograph showed a young woman with dark hair, pulled back in a regulation bun, sharp eyes, composed expression. Nothing unusual there. He flipped to the service record page. Then he stopped. His coffee cup found the desk with a quiet thud. 3 combat deployments to Afghanistan. Combat Infantry Badge. Bronze Star Medal with V device for valor. 2 Purple Hearts. Expert Field Medical Badge. Explosive Ordnance Disposal Qualified. Army Commendation Medal with 2 oak leaf clusters. The list went on and on. Callahan had processed thousands of personnel files. He knew what a fabricated record looked like. He knew what nepotism smelled like. He knew the difference between earned decorations and political favors. This file sang with authenticity, or it was the most elaborate fraud he had ever seen. He pulled out his reading glasses, studied the dates. First deployment at 19, second at 21, third at 23. Back-to-back rotations with minimal dwell time between. EOD school completed during her second deployment. Cross-trained as a combat medic. Multiple unit commendations. Efficiency reports that read like someone describing a soldier twice her age. The Bronze Star citation caught his attention. Route 7, Kandahar Province, July 15, 2022. Complex ambush. 2 soldiers trapped in burning vehicle. Captain Mitchell, under sustained enemy fire from 3 positions, crossed 200 meters of open terrain. Extracted both casualties. Received wounds from enemy fragmentation. Continued treatment under fire for 4 hours until medical evacuation complete. Callahan set down the file. He had read thousands of award citations. Most were bureaucratic exercises, inflated language describing routine actions. This one was different. This one was written by someone who had been there, who had seen it, who still could not believe it had happened. The office door opened. Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb stepped inside. 38 years old, senior medic, good soldier, better man. Sir, the new captain is here for processing. Callahan looked up. Mitchell? Yes, Sergeant Major. She is waiting in the conference room. What is your read? Webb paused, considered his words carefully. Professional. Squared away. Uniform is immaculate but worn, not fresh out of the plastic. She carries herself like someone who has been places. But she is 25, Sergeant Major, and her chest looks like a career NCO with 20 years in. Callahan stood, pulled on his patrol cap. Let us go see what we have got. The conference room sat at the end of the hallway. Through the window, Callahan could see her, standing at parade rest. Back straight, eyes forward, not fidgeting, not checking her phone, just standing, waiting. The posture of someone comfortable with military bearing. They entered. Sarah Mitchell came to attention with practiced precision. Her salute was crisp, textbook perfect. At ease, Captain. Callahan returned the salute. Have a seat. She sat, hands folded on the table, eye contact direct but not challenging. Callahan settled into the chair across from her. Webb remained standing by the door. Welcome to Fort Carson, Captain Mitchell. I am Command Sergeant Major Callahan. I handle all incoming officer transfers for the battalion. Thank you, Sergeant Major. Her voice was steady, clear, no nervous edge to it. Callahan opened her file, made a show of reviewing it again. Let the silence stretch. An old interrogator's trick. See who breaks first. See who feels the need to fill empty air with explanations. Sarah Mitchell sat quietly, waited. Good sign. This is quite a record, Captain. Thank you, Sergeant Major. 3 deployments by age 25. That is unusual. I deployed when I was needed, Sergeant Major. EOD qualified, combat medic. That is a rare combination. The unit needed both skill sets. I volunteered to cross-train. Callahan looked up from the file. Met her eyes, dark brown, steady, but something else lived behind them. Something he recognized from his own mirror on certain mornings. The weight of things seen and done. The Bronze Star. Tell me about that. Sarah's jaw tightened, just slightly, just enough to notice. The citation is in the file, Sergeant Major. I want to hear it from you. She took a slow breath, let it out. July 15th, 2022. Route 7 in Kandahar Province. My unit was running convoy escort for a logistics train. Lead vehicle hit an explosively formed penetrator. Killed the driver instantly. 2 soldiers trapped, vehicle burning. Secondary ambush positions opened fire from 3 directions. Her voice remained steady, factual, but her right hand had moved to the table edge, fingers pressing down, holding on. Standard protocol is establish security perimeter and wait for quick reaction force. But the vehicle was fully involved. Ammunition starting to cook off. Those soldiers did not have time. What did you do? I grabbed my aid bag and my tools. I ran to the vehicle. Under fire. Yes, Sergeant Major. For how long? 4 hours. Callahan leaned back in his chair, studied her face, looking for bravado, for embellishment, for the subtle tells of someone stretching the truth. He saw none of that. He saw a young woman describing the worst day of her life in the same tone someone might use to report the weather. That was the sign of someone who had lived it, who had burned it into memory so deep that emotion could not touch it anymore, who had built walls around the experience just to function. You pulled both soldiers out. Yes, Sergeant Major. Took shrapnel yourself. Yes, Sergeant Major. Kept working. There was no choice, Sergeant Major. They needed help. I was the medic. Callahan closed the file, folded his hands on top of it. Captain Mitchell, I have been doing this job for 35 years. I have processed thousands of soldiers. I can spot a fabricated record from across the room. I can smell political favors and inflated citations a mile away. He paused. Let that hang in the air. Your record is legitimate. It was not a question, but Sarah answered anyway. Yes, Sergeant Moliero, it is. Why are you here? Fort Carson is a support posting. You could have requested airborne, special operations, any number of high-speed assignments. Instead, you are taking over a maintenance platoon in a logistics battalion. Something flickered across her face. Too fast to read. I have been downranged for 3 of the last 6 years, Sergeant Major. I needed to come home for a while. Home. The word carried weight. Callahan heard it. The exhaustion underneath. The quiet plea for normal, for safe, for something that did not involve dodging rockets and pulling burning soldiers from metal coffins. He had heard that tone before, from soldiers who had given everything they had and needed time to remember what peace felt like. Understood, Captain. Lieutenant Colonel Hartley commands the battalion. He is expecting you at 1300 hours. Sergeant Webb will show you to your quarters and give you the nickel tour. Thank you, Sergeant Major. She stood, came to attention, saluted. Callahan returned it, watched her turn and leave with Webb. The door closed behind them. He sat alone in the conference room, staring at her file. 25 years old. His own daughter was 27, married, 2 kids, living in Virginia, teaching elementary school. The most dangerous thing she faced on a daily basis was playground duty and parent-teacher conferences. Sarah Mitchell had spent her early 20s in the most dangerous places on earth, had earned decorations that soldiers twice her age would be proud to wear, had pulled men from fire while people tried to kill her. And now she was here, taking over a maintenance platoon, trying to find whatever normal looked like after that. Callahan pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, found the number he wanted. It rang 3 times. 3rd Group Operations, this is Major Collins. Collins, this is Bear Callahan over at Fort Carson. I need a favor. Bear, long time, what do you need? You had a Captain Sarah Mitchell attached to your task force. 2022 deployment. Kandahar. A pause on the line. Yeah, I remember her. Why? She just transferred to my battalion. I am looking at her file. I need to know if this is real. Another pause, longer this time. It is real, Bear. All of it. More than what is in the official record. Tell me. Collins took a breath. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Lower, quieter. She was attached to us as EOD support. Good soldier, kept her head down, did her job. We all thought she was just another tech. Then Route 7 happened. Go on. My convoy got hit. Textbook complex ambush. EFPs, small arms, RPGs, the works. We were getting shredded, lost our lead vehicle immediately. Two men trapped inside, burning alive. Callahan could hear it in Colin's voice. The memory, still fresh, still raw. Standard procedure is we secure the area and wait for support. But there was no time. Mitchell did not ask permission. Did not wait for orders. She just grabbed her gear and ran. We are talking 200 meters of open terrain while 3 machine gun positions are trying to kill her. What happened? I watched her through my scope, rounds hitting all around her. She never stopped, never even slowed down. Got to the truck, started cutting those men free. Vehicle was fully engulfed, ammunition cooking off, RPGs hitting close enough to throw dirt on her. She kept working. Callahan closed his eyes, pictured it. Young medic running through hell because 2 soldiers needed her. Took her 15 minutes to get the first soldier out. His legs were pinned. She had to use hydraulic cutters while bullets bounced off the armor around her. Took shrapnel from a near miss. Kept working. Got him clear. Treated his injuries right there in the kill zone. Then went back for the second man. Jesus! Vehicle exploded just as she pulled him out. Blast wave threw them both 20 feet. Thought we had lost all 3, but she got up, dragged that soldier to cover, started working on him. Colin stopped, cleared his throat. Bear, I put her in for the Medal of Honor. Brigade downgraded it to Bronze Star. Said it did not meet the criteria for sustained combat action. That is bullshit. What she did that day was the bravest thing I have ever seen, and I have been doing this for 20 years. The line went quiet. Those 2 soldiers are alive right now because of her, Collins continued. They went home to their families. One of them has a kid now. That little girl exists because Sarah Mitchell did not think about herself. She thought about them. Callahan opened his eyes, looked at the file again. How was she after? What do you mean? Mentally, emotionally. Collins sighed. She did not talk about it. Ever. Went right back to work. Finished the deployment. Volunteered for another rotation 6 months later. We all thought she was processing it fine. But nobody processes something like that fine, Bear. Nobody runs through that much fire and comes out the other side without carrying some of it. She just hit it better than most. Callahan thanked him, ended the call, sat in the empty conference room with Sarah Mitchell's file open in front of him. He thought about his own father. Vietnam, 3 tours, infantry. Came home with a chest full of medals and a head full of ghosts. Drank himself into an early grave by 52. Never got help, never talked about it. Just carried it alone until the weight crushed him. Callahan had joined the army to understand his father, to walk in his footsteps, to see what he had seen. 35 years later, he understood the weight, understood the ghosts, understood why his father had turned to the bottle instead of reaching out. Because reaching out meant admitting the ghosts were real. Sarah Mitchell had ghosts. He could see them in her eyes, young ghosts, fresh ghosts, the kind that still had teeth. She had come to Fort Carson looking for peace, for normal, for distance from the fire and the blood and the screaming. Callahan made a decision. His last 2 months before retirement, his final mission, he would make sure this young captain found what she was looking for, would make sure she did not end up like his father, would make sure those ghosts did not win. He owed that to his father. He owed that to every soldier who had ever carried that weight. 3 days later, Sarah Mitchell stood in front of 2nd Platoon, Alpha Company, 82nd Support Battalion. Her new command, 38 soldiers, mix of ranks and experience levels, vehicle mechanics mostly, a few recovery specialists, solid troops. They looked at her with the standard mix of curiosity and skepticism that every new officer faced. But she could see the extra layer, the double take at her age, the sideways glances at her chest full of ribbons. She had seen those looks before, at every new assignment, every new unit. Too young, too decorated, cannot be real. Let them look, let them wonder. She would prove herself the same way she always did, by doing the work, by leading from the front, by earning their respect instead of demanding it. Lieutenant Colonel James Hartley stood beside her, 42 years old, battalion commander, career logistics officer, good at his job. Fair leader, he finished the introduction. Captain Mitchell comes to us with extensive combat experience and technical expertise in both medical and EOD fields. She will be taking over maintenance operations for the platoon. I expect you all to give her your full support and cooperation. Hartley stepped back, gave Sarah a nod. Your platoon, Captain. Sarah faced her soldiers, made eye contact with each one. Let them see her. Let them measure her. My name is Captain Sarah Mitchell. I know what you are thinking. I am young. I am new. And I have decorations that do not match my age. You are wondering if I earned them or if I got them some other way. She paused. Let that hang in the air. Fair question. Here's my answer. I do not care what you think right now. What I care about is whether you can do your jobs and whether I can lead you effectively. Time will answer both those questions. A few soldiers shifted, not used to that kind of directness from a new officer. I am not here to tell you war stories. I am not here to wave my medals around. I am here to make sure your vehicles work, your soldiers are trained, and this platoon runs like a professional outfit. That is the job. That is what matters. She looked at each section leader in turn. I will never ask you to do something I would not do myself. I will never put mission before people. And I will never let politics or bureaucracy get in the way of taking care of soldiers. That is my promise to you. The platoon was quiet, listening, evaluating. Questions? A hand went up. Young soldier, baby-faced, could not be more than 19. Ma'am, Private First Class Danny Morrison. Go ahead, Private Morrison. Are those medals real? The question hung in the air. Other soldiers tensed, waited to see how she would react. Would she get defensive, angry, pull rank? Sarah smiled. Small, genuine. Yes, Private, they are real. How did you get them? By doing my job, same as everyone else here, but you are only 25. I am aware of my age, Private. A few quiet chuckles from the platoon. Ma'am, no disrespect, but how does someone our age get a Bronze Star? Sarah's smile faded, not angry, just serious. By being in the right place at the wrong time, Private, and by doing what needed to be done, same as any other soldier who has ever earned one. Morrison nodded, sat back, satisfied for now. Any other questions? Silence. Good. First Sergeant Williams will brief you on tomorrow's maintenance schedule. Dismissed. The platoon dispersed. Sarah watched them go, sorting them out in her mind. Who were the leaders? Who were the followers? Who would be problems? Who would be assets? Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb approached. He was the senior medic assigned to the battalion. Not directly under her command, but they would be working together regularly. That was well handled, ma'am. Which part? Not getting defensive about the medals question. A lot of officers would have pulled rank. Sarah shrugged. He asked a fair question. I would wonder too if I were him. Webb smiled. You are going to do fine here, Captain. Sarah hoped he was right. The first week passed in a blur of paperwork and meetings and endless briefings. Sarah learned the rhythm of the battalion, learned who the real leaders were and who just wore the rank, learned which systems worked and which ones were held together with duct tape and prayer. She also learned that Danny Morrison was not the only one with doubts. The whispers followed her everywhere. Mess hall, motor pool, PX, always just out of earshot but close enough to hear the tone. Too young, too many medals, probably nepotism, probably exaggerated. Sarah ignored it. She had heard it all before. Words were cheap. Actions mattered. On Thursday, the battalion received notice. Field training exercise in 2 weeks. Full deployment to the training area. 3 days of simulated combat operations. All vehicles had to be mission ready. Sarah's platoon had 18 vehicles. 12 were green, 6 were yellow or red status. Mechanical issues, parts on order, maintenance backlogs. Lieutenant Colonel Hartley called her into his office. Captain Mitchell, I need all vehicles green by next Friday. That gives you 8 days. Sir, 6 of those vehicles have significant issues. I can get 4 of them up. The other 2 need parts that are back-ordered. How long for the parts? 2 weeks minimum. We need them in 8 days. Sir, I cannot make parts appear out of thin air. Hartley leaned back in his chair, studied her. Figure it out, Captain. This exercise has been on the calendar for 6 months. Your predecessor let maintenance slide. You are fixing his problems. Welcome to command. Sarah left his office, walked back to the motor pool, looked at the 2 problem vehicles. One MARAP with a bad electrical system. One LMTV with a blown transmission. Her platoon mechanic stood nearby, watching, waiting to see what she would do. She walked to the MRAP, opened the engine compartment, started tracing wiring harnesses. Ma'am, we already checked all that. The problem is in the main junction box. We need a new one. Sarah did not respond, kept tracing, found the junction box, opened it, studied the connections. Get me a multimeter and a wiring diagram. The mechanic hesitated. Ma'am, we have been through this. We need a new box. Humor me, specialist. 20 minutes later, Sarah found it. Someone had made an improvised repair, during a previous deployment, jumped two circuits that should not be connected. It worked short-term, but degraded over time. Now it was causing intermittent failures throughout the electrical system. She traced it back, found the original problem, a corroded connector. $5 part, easy fix if you knew where to look. Get me a replacement connector. Standard stock. Should be in supply. The mechanic's eyes widened. You found it? Found it? Get me the part. 2 hours later, the MRAP was running. All electrical systems green. Her mechanics stood around the vehicle, staring. One of them spoke up. Ma'am, how did you know where to look? Because I have seen that improvised repair before. Downrange. When you are weeks away from supply and something breaks, you make do. But those fixes have consequences later. She moved to the LMTV, studied the transmission issue. This one we legitimately need parts for. But I know a workaround. We can swap the transmission from the deadline vehicle in Bay 3. That one has a blown engine, but the transmission is fine. Sergeant Davis, the senior mechanic, shook his head. Ma'am, that is not authorized. We would need a work order and approval from maintenance control. Sarah looked at him. Sergeant Davis, do you want this vehicle ready for the field, or do you want to fill out paperwork? Both, ma'am. Regulations exist for a reason. You are right, they do. And in a perfect world, we would follow every procedure exactly. But we do not live in a perfect world. We live in a world where we have 8 days to get this battalion ready for training. So here is what we are going to do. We are going to swap that transmission. We are going to document it properly after we get it done. And we are going to make sure this vehicle is ready when the colonel needs it. Davis looked uncertain. Ma'am, if this goes sideways, it is on me. I am the senior mechanic. No, Sergeant. If this goes sideways, it is on me. I am the platoon leader. I am giving the order. You are executing it. Clear? Clear, ma'am. Then let us get to work. Sarah stripped off her blouse, rolled up her sleeves, crawled under the LMTV with her mechanics. They worked through the night, Sarah right alongside them, hands covered in grease, uniform filthy, no different than any other mechanic in the bay. At 0300, they finished, tested the transmission, everything worked. Her mechanics stood around, exhausted but satisfied. They looked at Sarah differently now, not like a new officer with too many medals, like a leader who would get her hands dirty alongside them. Sergeant Davis approached. Ma'am, I apologize for doubting you earlier. No apology needed, Sergeant. You were right to question. Regulations exist for a reason, but so does tactical flexibility. She grabbed her blouse, started to pull it on. Davis reached out, stopped her. Ma'am, your ribbons. Sarah looked down. Her uniform blouse was covered in grease and hydraulic fluid. The ribbons were barely visible under the grime. I will clean it tomorrow. That bronze star, ma'am. You earned that doing vehicle recovery? Something like that, Sergeant. Under fire? Yes. Davis nodded slowly. Then you have definitely done this before. Sarah pulled on the filthy blouse. Many times, Sergeant, many times. By morning, both vehicles were green. Sarah submitted the paperwork through proper channels, waited for the fallback. It came that afternoon. Captain Mitchell, report to the battalion commander immediately. Sarah entered Hartley's office, stood at attention. He looked up from his computer screen. His expression was unreadable. Captain, I received a rather interesting report from maintenance control this morning. Apparently you swapped a transmission without proper authorization. Yes, sir. Do you have an explanation? Sir, the vehicle was deadlined. We needed it mission ready. The only way to meet your timeline was to use available parts from another deadline vehicle. I made a tactical decision to prioritize mission over process. Hartley leaned back. And if I told you that decision violated 3 separate regulations and could result in a letter of reprimand in your file, then I would accept that letter, sir. I made the call. I take the responsibility. Hartley stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. The vehicle is running. Yes, sir. All systems check out. Yes, sir. And you documented everything after the fact. Yes, sir. Full paperwork trail. Everything by the book except the timing. Hartley pulled up another screen. Maintenance control was not happy. They wanted me to reprimand you formally. Yes, sir. I told them to pound sand. Sarah blinked. Did not expect that. Sir, Captain Mitchell, I have commanded this battalion for 2 years. I have watched maintenance deadlines slip month after month. I have watched officers make excuses and push problems down the road. You have been here 1 week and you fixed 2 vehicles everyone else said were impossible. He stood up, walked around his desk. You broke some rules. You pissed off some people who care more about process than results. But you got the job done. and you took responsibility for your decisions. That is what I need in my platoon leaders." He extended his hand. "Well done, Captain." Sarah shook it. "Thank you, sir. Now get cleaned up. You look like you crawled through a motor pool." "I did, sir." She left his office, walked back to her platoon area. Her soldiers had heard about the meeting, were waiting to see if she got hammered. When she walked in smiling, they knew. The vehicles worked. The mission came first. The captain had taken the risk and won. That afternoon, Sergeant Marcus Webb found her in the platoon office. "Word is getting around, ma'am." "What word?" "That the new captain is not afraid to get her hands dirty. That she will bend rules to take care of soldiers. That she stands behind her decisions." "Good," Webb smiled. "That is exactly what this battalion needs." The following week, the battalion deployed to the training area. Pinon Canyon, vast expanse of Colorado terrain, perfect for realistic training scenarios. All vehicles green, all systems operational. Lieutenant Colonel Hartley's battalion rolled out in perfect order. Sarah rode in the convoy. Her platoon dispersed throughout the formation, each vehicle with assigned mechanics ready to handle any breakdowns. Command Sergeant Major Callahan was in the trail vehicle, observing, evaluating, making mental notes about every leader in the battalion. Day 1 went smooth. Convoy operations, communications checks, established base camp, standard stuff. Day 2 brought the complexity. Simulated combat scenario, multiple objectives, time-sensitive missions, all designed to test leadership under pressure. Sarah's platoon was tasked with vehicle recovery operations. If any vehicle broke down during the mission, her team had to get it running or tow it clear. At 1100 hours, the first casualty hit. Vehicle down. MRAP, lost power to all systems. Sarah's recovery team rolled. She went with them, not because she had to, because that is what leaders do. They reached the disabled vehicle in 15 minutes. Sarah jumped out, started diagnostics. The vehicle commander, a young sergeant, looked stressed. "Ma'am, we got nothing. Completely dead. In a real scenario, we would be sitting ducks." "How long have you been down?" 5 minutes. Sarah popped the engine compartment, traced the main power line. Found it in 2 minutes. Loose battery terminal, simple fix, could happen to anyone. She tightened it, checked connections. The vehicle roared to life. The sergeant stared. "That is it, a loose connection?" "That is it, Sergeant. Sometimes the simplest problems cause the biggest headaches." By the time the recovery team rolled back to base, word had spread. The new captain fixed a deadline vehicle in under 20 minutes, under simulated combat pressure, without breaking a sweat. That evening, Callahan walked through the base camp, checked on platoons, talked to soldiers, took the temperature of the battalion. He found Sarah sitting alone near her platoon area, reviewing maintenance logs by flashlight. "Captain Mitchell." She stood, came to attention. "At ease. Mind if I sit?" "Of course, Sergeant Major." Callahan settled onto an equipment crate, pulled out his coffee thermos, offered her a cup. She accepted. They sat in comfortable silence. Night sounds of the training area around them. Distant generator hum. Occasional radio chatter. The quiet sounds of a military base at rest. "You did good work today, Captain." "Thank you, Sergeant Major." "That battery terminal could have taken an hour to diagnose. You found it in 2 minutes." "Lucky guess." Callahan smiled. "No such thing as lucky in maintenance. You knew where to look because you have done this before. Many times." Sarah sipped her coffee, said nothing. "Where did you learn vehicle recovery?" "Downrange, Sergeant Major. We did not always have recovery assets available, so we learned to fix things ourselves or wait for days." Callahan nodded. He knew that world, the reality of deployed operations, where creativity and improvisation mattered more than manuals. They sat quiet for another moment. Then Callahan spoke again, voice lower, more personal. "My father served in Vietnam." Sarah looked at him, surprised by the shift. 3 tours. Infantry, saw heavy combat, came home with decorations and nightmares. He never talked about it, never processed it, just carried it until it crushed him. "I am sorry, Sergeant Major." He drank himself to death by 52. Left behind a wife and 3 kids who never really knew him, who watched him disappear a little more every day. Callahan turned to face her. "I joined this army to understand him, to see what he saw, to walk where he walked. Spent 35 years trying to understand, and I finally do." He paused. "The hardest part is not the combat. It is carrying it afterward, alone in silence, pretending you are fine when the ghosts are eating you alive." Sarah's grip tightened on her coffee cup. She stared into the darkness. Why are you telling me this, Sergeant Major? Because I see it in you, Captain. The same thing I saw in my father. The same thing I see in my own mirror some mornings. You carry weight that most people cannot imagine. And you carry it alone because that is what we do. That is what soldiers do. I am fine, Sergeant Major. I know you are, right now, in this moment. But what about next month? Next year? What happens when those ghosts get loud and there is nobody around who understands? Sarah did not answer. Callahan stood. I retire in 2 months, Captain. 35 years of service. And you know what my biggest regret is? What, Sergeant Major? All the soldiers I could have helped but did not. All the conversations I did not have. All the signs I saw and ignored because it was easier to look away. He set his empty cup on the crate. I am not going to ignore those signs anymore. Not in my last 2 months. So here is what I am telling you. If you ever need to talk about anything, you know where to find me. He walked away into the darkness, left Sarah sitting alone with her coffee and her thoughts and the weight of words that hit too close to home. Day 3 of the exercise brought the real test. Simulated convoy ambush, multiple casualties, vehicle recovery under fire, everything designed to stress the system and see how leaders responded. Sarah's platoon was tasked with recovering a disabled vehicle from the ambush site under simulated enemy fire, with time pressure and multiple complications. The scenario started at 0600. Her recovery team rolled out. 4 vehicles, 12 soldiers, all wearing Miles gear for realistic force-on-force engagement. They reached the ambush site at 0630. The disabled vehicle sat in the middle of the road, 2 soldiers playing casualties. Simulated enemy fire coming from 3 positions. The whole scenario orchestrated to maximum chaos. Sarah assessed the situation, developed a plan, started issuing orders. Webb, take 2 soldiers and establish suppressive fire on position Alpha. Davis, you are on vehicle recovery. Get that MRAP hooked up and ready to tow. Morrison, you are on casualty evacuation. Get those wounded soldiers clear. Her team executed. Professional. Coordinated. Each soldier knowing their role. Sarah moved between positions, directing, adjusting, responding to new complications as the observer controllers threw them in. Simulated RPG hit. Another casualty. Vehicle fire. Secondary IED. Each complication designed to see how she would respond. Sarah adapted, changed plans on the fly, kept her team moving, kept them focused. 20 minutes into the scenario, they had the vehicle hooked up, casualties loaded, team ready to extract. Then the final twist. Vehicle 1 is hit. You have catastrophic damage, cannot move. New casualties. Sarah processed it, made a decision. Webb, I need your recovery vehicle here. Davis, you tow vehicle 1. I will secure vehicle 2. Morrison, redistribute casualties between remaining vehicles. Go. But ma'am, that leaves you without transportation. I will ride with Davis. Move. They executed. Sarah stayed with the damaged vehicles, coordinating, directing, making sure everything got done. The scenario ended at 0715, 45 minutes start to finish. All vehicles recovered, all casualties evacuated. Mission complete. The observer controller, a grizzled major, walked up to Sarah. Captain Mitchell, that was textbook vehicle recovery under fire. You adapted to changing conditions. You prioritized properly. You led from the front. He made notes on his clipboard. How did you learn to operate like that? Experience, sir. Where? Afghanistan, sir. Route 7, Route Tampa. Half a dozen other roads that do not have names. The major looked up from his clipboard, really looked at her, saw the ribbons on her chest. You did this for real? Yes, sir. Under real fire? Yes, sir. Multiple times? Yes. The major nodded slowly. Carry on, Captain. Outstanding work. The battalion returned to Fort Carson that afternoon. Tired, dirty, satisfied. Lieutenant Colonel Hartley held an after-action review, covered the entire exercise, highlighted successes, identified areas for improvement. When he got to vehicle recovery operations, he paused. Captain Mitchell and her platoon performed above standard throughout this exercise. Multiple vehicle recoveries. Quick response times. Professional execution under pressure. He looked at Sarah. Captain Mitchell specifically demonstrated tactical leadership in the final scenario. Adapted to changing conditions. Prioritized mission and soldier welfare. Executed complex operations without hesitation. Around the room, soldiers were nodding. They had all heard about the final scenario, about how the new captain had stayed cool under pressure. Lieutenant Colonel Hartley continued, "This is the standard I expect from all my leaders. Know your job, take care of your soldiers, execute the mission." Captain Mitchell showed us how it is done. After the AAR, Sarah walked back to her platoon area. Her soldiers were already there, cleaning vehicles, doing maintenance, the work that never ended. Danny Morrison approached. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead, Private." "That final scenario today, when you stayed with the damaged vehicles, you could have sent someone else." "I could have, but you did not. You stayed, like you always stay." "That is the job, Private." Morrison shook his head. "No, ma'am, that is not just the job. That is leadership. Real leadership." He paused, chose his words carefully. "I doubted you when you first got here. Thought you were too young. Thought the medals did not make sense. I was wrong. You had fair questions, Private. Yeah, but I should have waited to see you in action before making judgments. You proved yourself this week. You proved yourself to all of us. I appreciate that, Private Morrison. That Bronze Star, ma'am. You earned that doing vehicle recovery. Something like that, under real fire." "Yes, and you went back for the second soldier, even when the vehicle was exploding." "How do you know that?" Morrison smiled. "Word gets around, ma'am. Sergeant Webb knows some people who were there. The story's getting out." Sarah felt her chest tighten. She did not want the story getting out. Did not want to become the officer known for that one day instead of for all the days that followed. But she also knew this was inevitable. The story would spread. People would talk. She could not stop it. All she could do was keep proving herself every day. Keep being the leader her soldiers needed. Not the hero from one dramatic moment, but the consistent, reliable leader who showed up and did the work. That evening, Command Sergeant Major Callahan sat in his office, reviewing notes from the exercise, making assessments, planning. 2 months until retirement. His replacement was already selected. A good NCO, solid, competent. But Callahan had one more mission to complete before he left. He thought about Sarah Mitchell, about the weight she carried, about the ghosts in her eyes. He thought about his father, about all the soldiers who had come home from war and never really come home at all. He made a decision. His final mission would be building something that lasted beyond his service. A program, a system, a way for veterans to help other veterans. A way to make sure Sarah Mitchell and soldiers like her did not carry their weight alone. He did not know exactly what that would look like yet, but he had 2 months to figure it out. 2 months to build something that mattered. 2 months to make sure his 35 years meant something beyond just his own service. He picked up the phone, started making calls. The mission was beginning. Meanwhile, in her small apartment off base, Sarah Mitchell sat at her kitchen table. Laptop open, email from her sister Maria waiting to be read. She had not responded in 2 weeks. Maria wanted to know how she was doing, wanted to hear about the new assignment, wanted to make sure Sarah was taking care of herself. Sarah stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. What could she say? That she was fine? That was not true. That she was struggling? Maria would worry. That the nightmares were getting worse? That would lead to questions she did not want to answer. Sarah closed the laptop. She walked to the window, looked out at Fort Carson, at the mountains in the distance, at the base that was slowly becoming home. She thought about this past week, about fixing vehicles and leading soldiers and proving herself all over again. She thought about Command Sergeant Major Callahan and his story about his father. She thought about all the ghosts she carried, all the faces she saw in dreams, all the weight that never really went away. But she also thought about Danny Morrison and Sergeant Davis and all her soldiers who were starting to trust her, starting to believe in her. Maybe that was enough for now. Maybe proving herself was the best way to keep the ghosts at bay. Maybe staying busy was better than sitting still and letting the memories catch up. Sarah turned away from the window, got ready for bed, set her alarm for 05:30. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, new chances to prove herself. And she would meet them the same way she always did. Head up, shoulders back, moving forward. Because that was what soldiers did. They carried the weight, and they kept moving forward. 4 months passed at Fort Carson. Sarah Mitchell fell into a rhythm. Morning physical training, platoon operations, maintenance schedules, briefings, the comfortable routine of garrison life after years of deployment uncertainty. Her soldiers no longer questioned her. The field exercise had settled that. The late nights fixing vehicles had settled that. The quiet competence she brought to every task had settled that. She was their captain now, not the young officer with too many medals, not the question mark that needed proving, just their leader. Command Sergeant Major Callahan watched her progress with quiet satisfaction. She was integrating well, building relationships, taking care of her soldiers, exactly what he had hoped for. But he also noticed the things she tried to hide, the shadows under her eyes some mornings, the way she went rigid when helicopters flew overhead, the careful distance she maintained from deeper conversations. The ghosts were still there, just better concealed. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. Callahan was in his office reviewing the weekly training schedule when his phone rang. Battalion operations. They needed him in the conference room immediately. He found Lieutenant Colonel Hartley already there, along with someone Callahan did not recognize. A colonel, Signal Corps branch insignia, late 50s or early 60s, ramrod, straight posture, the bearing of someone who had spent a career in uniform. Sergeant Major Callahan, this is Colonel Frank Mitchell. He is here from Pentagon as part of the Inspector General team. They are conducting routine inspections across several installations. Fort Carson is on the list. Callahan shook his hand. Firm grip, direct eye contact, professional. Colonel, welcome to Fort Carson. Thank you, Sergeant Major. I understand you run a tight ship here. We do our best, sir. Frank Mitchell, the name registered. Callahan's mind made the connection immediately. He glanced at Hartley, saw the slight tension around his commander's eyes. Hartley had made the connection too. Sarah's uncle. The meeting covered standard inspection procedures, timeline, areas of focus, personnel interviews. Nothing unusual. Callahan had been through dozens of IG inspections over his career. Routine bureaucracy. But as Frank Mitchell talked, Callahan studied him, looking for family resemblance, looking for signs of the estrangement Sarah had never mentioned, but Callahan had pieced together from what she did not say. The inspection would take 2 weeks. Frank would be reviewing records, conducting interviews, observing operations, all standard procedure. At the end of the briefing, Frank asked a question. I notice you have a Captain Sarah Mitchell assigned to the battalion. I will need to review her personnel file as part of the inspection. Hartley nodded. Of course, sir, her file is exemplary. She has been an outstanding addition to our team. Frank's expression did not change. I am sure she has. I still need to review it thoroughly. After Frank left, Callahan remained behind with Hartley. Sir, do you know who that is? Hartley closed the conference room door. Sarah Mitchell's uncle, younger brother of Major General Thomas Mitchell. Have you told her he is here? Not yet. I wanted to brief you first. Does she have a relationship with him? Based on her personnel file, no. He is not listed as next of kin or emergency contact. Her sister Maria is. Callahan processed that. An uncle who was not emergency contact, that spoke volumes. This could be complicated, sir. Agreed, but we have to let the inspection proceed normally. We can not show favoritism or interfere. The IG process exists for a reason. Understood, sir, but I request permission to inform Captain Mitchell personally before she hears it through the grapevine. Granted, do it today. Callahan found Sarah in the motor pool. She was underneath an LMTV with Sergeant Davis, both covered in grease, working on what sounded like a transmission issue. Captain Mitchell, I need a word. Sarah rolled out from under the vehicle, stood, wiped her hands on a shop rag. Yes, Sergeant Major. In private. They walked to her platoon office, small space, cluttered with manuals and work orders and the organized chaos of an active maintenance operation. Callahan closed the door. We have an IG inspection starting next week. Colonel from Pentagon. He will be reviewing personnel files and conducting interviews. Standard procedure, Sergeant Major. Nothing unusual there. The colonel's name is Frank Mitchell. Sarah went very still. The shop rag stopped moving in her hands. My uncle. Yes. She turned away, looked out the small window at the motor pool beyond. How long? 2 weeks. Did he request this assignment? Request to come here? I do not know, Captain. Could be coincidence. Fort Carson was on the scheduled inspection rotation. Sarah's shoulders were rigid, every line of her posture screaming tension even as she tried to maintain composure. Does he know I am here? He asked to review your file specifically. So yes, of course he did. She turned back to face Callahan, her expression carefully neutral. Professional mask back in place. I assume the inspection will proceed normally. I assume I am expected to cooperate fully. Yes, then I will. Is there anything else, Sergeant Major? Callahan studied her, saw the walls going up, the distance being created, the protective barriers being reinforced. Sarah, if you need to talk about this, my door's open. There is nothing to talk about, Sergeant Major. An IG inspection is routine. The fact that the inspector happens to be related to me does not change anything. It changes some things. Not professionally, Professionally, this is just another inspection. I will treat it as such. And personally, she met his eyes. Hers were hard, cold, completely unlike the officer he had come to know over the past 4 months. I have no personal relationship with Colonel Mitchell. He made that choice years ago. I respect it. Callahan wanted to press, wanted to ask about the history, about the estrangement, about why her uncle was not emergency contact. But he recognized his look on her face. The same look soldiers got when they did not want to discuss certain deployments, certain missions, certain memories. Some doors stayed closed for a reason. Understood, Captain. Carry on. Sarah returned to work, crawled back under the LMTV, lost herself in the mechanical simplicity of gears and transmissions and problems that had clear solutions. But her hands shook slightly as she worked. The inspection began the following Monday. Colonel Frank Mitchell arrived with a small team, set up in temporary office space, started reviewing records. Fort Carson operations continued normally. Soldiers went about their duties. The presence of IG inspectors was noted but not feared. The battalion ran professionally. There was nothing to hide. Sarah avoided the inspection offices, stayed focused on her platoon, on her vehicles, on her soldiers. Business as usual. For 3 days it worked. Then Frank Mitchell requested an interview with Private Danny Morrison. Danny came to Sarah's office afterward, looking confused. Ma'am, the IG colonel just spent 30 minutes asking me about you. What kind of questions? About your leadership, about the field exercise, about your technical knowledge, about whether you actually fix vehicles yourself or just supervise. What did you tell him? The truth, ma'am, that you are the best platoon leader I have ever served under, that you know your job better than most mechanics, that you lead from the front. Good, that is the truth. But ma'am, why is he asking? Is something wrong? Danny, IG inspections involve personnel interviews. It is standard. Do not worry about it. But Morrison was not the only one. Over the next week, Frank Mitchell interviewed Sergeant Davis, Sergeant First Class Webb, multiple soldiers from Sarah's platoon, even Lieutenant Colonel Hartley, all asking similar questions about Sarah's competence, about her decorations, about whether her record seemed legitimate. The questions were professional, appropriate for an IG inspection, but the pattern was clear. Frank Mitchell was investigating his niece. Word spread through the battalion, soldiers talked, speculation grew. Was Captain Mitchell under investigation? Had she done something wrong? What was the IG looking for? Sarah ignored it. Head down, work focused, professional. But inside she was burning. On Friday afternoon, Frank Mitchell sent a formal request. He wanted to interview Captain Sarah Mitchell. Monday morning, 0900 hours. Sarah read the notification, crumpled it, threw it into the trash, retrieved it, smoothed it out, put it in her calendar. Professional, routine, just another interview. That evening, her phone rang. Maria. She almost did not answer, but Maria would just keep calling. Hey, Sarah, I heard Uncle Frank is at Fort Carson. Word travels fast. He called me, asked about you. What did he say? That he is conducting an inspection, that you are assigned there, that he wanted to know if we had been in contact. What did you tell him? The truth, that we talk regularly, that you are doing well, that you have not mentioned him in 7 years. Maria paused. Sarah, what is going on? Nothing. He is doing his job. I am doing mine. He is your uncle. Biology is not relationship, Maria. He made that clear when Dad died. Maria sighed. Sarah could picture her, sitting in her apartment in Denver, probably at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, probably worrying like she always worried. Maybe this is his way of reaching out. If Frank Mitchell wanted to reach out, he could pick up a phone like a normal human being. He does not get to show up at my duty station and interrogate my soldiers as some kind of reconciliation gesture. Maybe he does not know how else to approach you. Then he should have figured that out 7 years ago when we needed him. Sarah hung up, immediately regretted it, texted an apology. Maria responded with a heart emoji and the words, love you. Sarah sat in her apartment, alone, staring at the wall. She thought about her father, Major General Thomas Mitchell, dead 11 years now, killed by a suicide bomber outside Fort Lightning in Kabul. She had been 17. She thought about the funeral, full military honors, folded flag, rifle salute, taps playing while her mother sobbed, and Maria held her hand and Sarah stood frozen, unable to cry, unable to process, unable to believe her father was gone. She thought about looking for Uncle Frank in the crowd, hoping he would be there, hoping family would show up when it mattered most. He never came, never called, never wrote, never acknowledged his brother's death beyond a brief condolence card that arrived 3 weeks late. Sarah had tried to reach out multiple times over the years. Calls went unreturned, emails unanswered. Eventually, she stopped trying, and now he was here, not as family, as an inspector, investigating her, questioning her competence, her decorations, her service. If that was his idea of reconnection, he could keep it. Monday morning arrived with typical Colorado sunshine, clear skies, mountain air, the kind of day that usually lifted spirits. Sarah dressed in her Class A uniform, ribbons and badges properly placed, shoes polished to mirror shine, hair in regulation bun, every detail perfect. If Frank Mitchell wanted professional, she would give him flawless professional. She arrived at the temporary IG office at 0850, 10 minutes early. Proper military courtesy. Colonel Mitchell will see you now. Sarah entered. The office was sparse. Temporary desk, 2 chairs, American flag in the corner, standard military setup. Frank Mitchell stood when she entered, returned her salute. Captain Mitchell, thank you for coming. Sir, have a seat. They sat across from each other, uncle and niece, separated by a desk and 7 years of silence and wounds that had never healed. Frank opened a file. Sarah recognized it. Her personnel jacket, every efficiency report, every award citation, every assignment, her entire military career in Manila folder. I have been reviewing your record, Captain. It is impressive. Thank you, sir. 3 combat deployments by age 25, extensive decorations, rapid advancement, cross-training in multiple specialties. He looked up. It is the kind of record that raises questions. What kind of questions, sir? Questions about authenticity, about how someone so young accumulates so much experience, about whether proper procedures were followed in award recommendations. Sarah kept her expression neutral, but her hands clenched under the table. Sir, every decoration in my record was earned according to regulation. Every award has witness statements. Every citation has supporting documentation. If you are questioning the legitimacy of my service record, I invite you to review every document thoroughly. I have been, Captain. That is why I am here. He pulled out a specific document, the Bronze Star citation. This one particularly interests me. July 15, 2022. Route 7, complex ambush. You extracted 2 soldiers under fire. That is correct, sir. The citation describes 4 hours under enemy fire, multiple exposures to hostile action, significant risk of life. That is accurate, sir. Were you alone? No, sir. I had support from my unit, but the extraction itself was my action. Why you? Why not someone else? Because I was the medic, because I had the training, because those soldiers needed help, and I was in position to provide it. Frank leaned back, studied her. Sarah held his gaze, refused to look away first. Captain Mitchell, do you understand why I'm asking these questions? Because you are conducting an IG inspection, sir. It is your job. Beyond that? No, sir, I do not understand beyond that. I am your uncle. Sir, with respect, you are a colonel conducting an official inspection. Our family relationship, such as it is, has no bearing on this conversation. Frank flinched, almost imperceptibly, but Sarah saw it. Sarah, I am trying to understand what happened, what you have been through, what you have become. You could have tried to understand 7 years ago, sir, when it mattered. The words came out harder than she intended, more emotion than she wanted to show. But they were out now, hanging in the air between them. Frank set down the file. You are right, I should have been there. After your father died, after the funeral, I should have reached out. Should have been there for you and Maria. But you were not. No, I was not. Silence filled the office, heavy, uncomfortable. Sarah, your father and I had a complicated relationship. I know, he told me. What did he tell you? That you were brilliant, that he relied on your expertise, that he wished you could see past your jealousy and realize how much he valued you. Frank looked away, stared at the flag in the corner. I was not jealous. Yes, you were, and it cost you your brother, and it cost us our uncle. Sarah stood. Sir, if this interview is concluded, I have duties to attend to. Sit down, Captain. I am not finished. Sarah sat, but her posture was rigid, every muscle tight. Frank pulled out more documents. Witness statements, after action reports, medical records from her injuries. I have spent the past week interviewing your soldiers, your leadership, people who served with you in Afghanistan. And every single person tells the same story, that you are competent, dedicated, brave, that you earned every decoration in your record, that you are exactly what your service jacket says you are. He closed the file. I also spoke with Major Collins, your task force commander from July 2022. He told me what really happened that day. Not just what is in the citation, what he saw through his scope, what he heard over the radio, what he tried to put you in for, and what brigade downgraded it to. Sarah said nothing. He told me you should have received the Medal of Honor, that what you did that day was the bravest thing he has ever witnessed, that those two soldiers are alive because you were willing to die for them. Frank's voice cracked slightly. I also spoke with one of those soldiers, Specialist Josh Ramirez. He is stationed at Fort Bliss now. I called him. You had no right. I had every right as part of this investigation, and I am glad I did, because he told me something the official reports do not mention. What? That when you pulled him out of that burning truck, when you were treating his injuries while bullets hit around you, you told him something. Sarah's throat tightened. She remembered. Remembered Josh screaming. Remembered the smell of burning fuel and flesh. Remembered trying to keep him calm while working. You told him, your family needs you home. I am not letting that truck be your last moment. You are going home. Frank leaned forward. Do you know what he said to me when I asked about you? No, sir. He said, Captain Mitchell gave me my life back. I have a daughter now because of her. A little girl who just turned 2. She exists because your niece ran into hell for me. Tears were streaming down Frank's face now. No attempt to hide them. Sarah, I came here to investigate you because I could not believe the record was real. I could not believe my niece, the 17-year-old girl who stood at her father's funeral, could have become this, could have done these things. He pulled an envelope from his jacket, aged paper, sealed, Sarah's name written on it in familiar handwriting. Your mother gave this to me 2 years ago, before she passed. She said your father wrote it before his last deployment, told her to give it to me if anything happened to him. I never opened it, could not face it. He slid it across the desk. I opened it last night, after talking to Collins, after talking to Ramirez, after realizing what I had missed, who you had become. Sarah stared at the envelope, her father's handwriting, a message from beyond the grave. Read it, Sarah, please. With shaking hands, she opened it, pulled out a single sheet. Her father's precise handwriting filled the page. The words blurred through tears, but she read them. Read her father's message to his brother. The message Frank had ignored for 9 years. Frank, if you are reading this, something happened to me. I need you to do something I never could in life. Forgive yourself. You were never in my shadow, little brother. You were my foundation. Every decision I made, I thought, what would Frank say? Your intelligence saved more lives than my orders ever did. If I am gone, my girls will need family, not a ghost haunted by jealousy that never existed. They need their Uncle Frank, brilliant, dedicated, and loved. Do not let pride steal more years. Life is too short, and family is everything. Sarah is strong. She will try to carry everything alone, like I do, like you do, like all Mitchell men do. But she should not have to. Be there for her. Be the uncle she deserves. Your brother, Thomas. Sarah finished reading, set down the letter, could not speak through the tears. Frank was crying openly now. 9 years of suppressed grief finally breaking through. Sarah, I am sorry. I am so sorry. I let pride and jealousy and my own weakness cost me my brother. And I let it cost you and Maria, your uncle. I thought staying away was easier than facing my failures. I was wrong. Sarah wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the hurt and rejection. But the letter in her hands was her father's voice, her father's wisdom, her father's love reaching across death to heal what his life could not. He loved you, she said quietly. Dad loved you. He just did not know how to show it in a way you could receive. I know that now. Too late. It is not too late. Frank looked up, hope and fear mixing in his eyes. For what? To be family, to try to show up. Sarah, I do not deserve another chance. None of us deserve anything, Uncle Frank. We just decide what we are going to do with the chances we get. She stood, walked around the desk, extended her hand. I am Captain Sarah Mitchell, daughter of Major General Thomas Mitchell, niece of Colonel Frank Mitchell. I serve in the United States Army, and I could use some family in my life. Frank stood, ignored her hand, pulled her into an embrace. Awkward at first, then genuine. Uncle and niece, family reconnecting across years of pain. When they finally separated, both were composed. professional bearing restored. But something had shifted. Something had healed. The inspection will conclude that your record is exemplary, Frank said, that all decorations are properly earned and documented, that your service is above reproach. I appreciate that, sir. And after the inspection is complete, if you would allow it, I would like to take you to dinner. As your uncle, not as an inspector. I would like that. Sarah left the office, walked into the Colorado sunshine, felt lighter than she had in years. Not because the inspection was over, but because a burden she did not know she still carried had finally been lifted. Family had come back. 2 days later, Command Sergeant Major Callahan received an unusual visitor. Specialist Josh Ramirez, transferred in from Fort Bliss on temporary duty. Official reason, consultation on vehicle recovery procedures. Real reason, Josh was struggling, bad. Callahan recognized the signs immediately. The hollowed-out look, the hypervigilance, the careful control barely holding together. He had seen it in his father, seen it in dozens of soldiers over his career, seen it in his own mirror on the bad days. Post-traumatic stress, the invisible wound that killed just as surely as any bullet. Josh sat in Callahan's office, trying to maintain composure, trying to be the professional soldier. But his hands shook. His eyes darted to every sound. His breathing was too quick. Specialist Ramirez, why are you really here? Josh tried to deflect. Sir, I was requested for technical consultation on vehicle recovery doctrine. Cut the crap, son. I was doing this job when you were in elementary school. I know when a soldier is in crisis. Talk to me. The facade crumbled. I cannot sleep, Sergeant Major. Have not really slept since Route 7. Every time I close my eyes, I am back in that truck. Burning, trapped, certain I am going to die. How long? 2 years. Since it happened, I thought it would get better. Thought I could push through, but it is getting worse. Are you getting help? I tried. VA gave me some pills, told me to talk to someone. But how do I talk about this? How do I explain to a civilian therapist what it feels like to burn alive? What it sounds like when ammunition starts cooking off around you? What Captain Mitchell's face looked like when she pulled me out? You talk to someone who has been there. Josh looked up. Sir, you do not need a civilian therapist who learned about combat from textbooks. You need another soldier who understands, who has carried the same weight. Read the Hun. I do not know anyone like that. Yes, you do. Captain Mitchell saved your life. Did you know she is stationed here? Josh nodded. Colonel Mitchell told me. That is actually why I requested the transfer. I needed to see her, needed to know if she was okay. Because if she is carrying this too, then maybe I am not crazy. You are not crazy, specialist. You are dealing with trauma. That is normal. That is human. Callahan stood. Come with me. They found Sarah in the motor pool, as usual. She was reviewing maintenance schedules with Sergeant Davis when Callahan approached with Josh. Sarah looked up, saw Josh. Recognition flashed across her face, followed immediately by concern. Specialist Ramirez. Ma'am. They stood facing each other, two soldiers bound by the worst day of their lives, uncertain how to bridge the gap. Captain, Specialist Ramirez is here on temporary duty. I think you two should talk. Sarah understood immediately, saw what Callahan saw, the struggling veteran, the survivor's weight. Of course, Sergeant Major. She gestured to Josh. Walk with me. They walked away from the motor pool, found a quiet spot near the battalion area, a bench under a tree, away from ears and eyes. Josh, what is going on? He told her. Everything. The nightmares, the hypervigilance, the drinking that was starting to creep up, the arguments with his wife, the feeling that he was losing himself piece by piece. Sarah listened, did not interrupt, did not judge, just listened. When he finished, she spoke quietly. I dream about that day too, Josh. About the truck burning, about your screaming, about Sergeant Williams pinned in the wreckage, about the ammunition cooking off and knowing we had seconds before it all exploded. You do? Yes, at least 3 times a week, sometimes more. But you seem fine. You seem like you have moved on. Sarah laughed, bitter sound. Josh, I am not fine. I am functional. There is a difference. I have learned to manage it, to compartmentalize, to keep moving forward. But the ghosts are still there. How do you do it? How do you manage? Honestly, some days I do not know. Some days I wake up and the weight is so heavy I can barely get out of bed. But I get up anyway, because that is what we do. We keep going. Is that enough? Just keep going? No, it is not. We also need to reach out, need to get help, need to stop pretending we can carry this alone. She turned to face him directly. Josh, I am in therapy, have been for 6 months. It helps. Not cure, not fix everything, but helps. Josh looks surprised. You are in therapy? You? Yes, me. Because saving your life does not mean I saved myself from everything that day did to me. I have trauma too, just like you, just like everyone who was there. But you are so strong. I am tired, Josh. I am scared. I have nightmares and panic attacks and days where I cannot stand the sound of helicopters. I am dealing with all of it. That is not weakness. That is being human. Josh was quiet, processing. My wife wants me to get help. Real help. But I am scared. Scared it means I am broken. Scared it means I cannot hack it. Getting help means you are smart enough to recognize you need it. That takes more courage than running into fire ever did. She paused. Josh, I ran into that truck because it was my job. Because you needed help. Now you are asking for help with something I cannot fix with a medical kit. But there are people who can help. Let them. What if it does not work? Then we try something else. But doing nothing guarantees nothing changes. Josh nodded slowly. There is a program starting here. Peer support for combat veterans. Led by soldiers who understand, who have been there. I am getting trained to help facilitate it. Would you go if I went? Sarah smiled. Josh, I am already going. For myself, because I need it too. That decision seemed to settle something in Josh. If Captain Mitchell needed help, if she was not too proud to reach out, then maybe he could too. Okay, I will try. Good. We start next week. They sat in comfortable silence. Two survivors. Two wounded soldiers. Beginning the long road to whatever healing looked like. Callahan watched from a distance. Saw the conversation. Saw the connection. Saw two soldiers starting to help each other carry what they could not carry alone. His final mission was taking shape. That evening, he met with Dr. Helen Richardson. She was a VA psychologist, 56 years old, widow of a soldier killed in Iraq. She understood the military, understood the culture, understood why veterans did not trust civilian help. She had been working on a peer support program, veterans helping veterans, professional oversight but soldier-led, evidence-based but culturally sensitive. Callahan wanted to bring it to Fort Carson, wanted to build something permanent, something that would last beyond his retirement. Dr. Richardson listened to his pitch, listened to his story about his father, about Sarah Mitchell, about Josh Ramirez, about all the soldiers who needed help but would not reach out to traditional sources. I can do this, she said, but I need a soldier to lead it, someone with credibility, someone other veterans will trust. I know exactly who we need. 2 days later, Callahan sat down with Sarah. Captain, I have a proposal for you. He explained the program, the vision, the need, the potential impact. Sarah listened. Her first instinct was to decline. She was dealing with her own issues. How could she help others? But then she thought about Josh, about the conversation they had, about how sharing her struggles had helped him more than any medical procedure ever could. Maybe that was the point. Maybe helping others was part of healing herself. I will do it, she said, but on one condition. Name it. You do not retire, not fully. You mentor me, teach me, help me build this right. Callahan smiled. I can do that. The program launched 3 weeks later. Small at first, just a handful of soldiers, veterans from various deployments and conflicts, all struggling in different ways. Sarah led the first session, nervous, uncertain, but honest. My name is Captain Sarah Mitchell. I am not a therapist. I am not here to fix you. I am here because I have been where you are, because I carry weight too, because I believe we can help each other. She told them about Route 7, not the sanitized citation version, the real version, the fear, the certainty she was going to die, the screaming and burning and chaos. She told them about the nightmares, the hypervigilance, the times she could not get out of bed, the therapy she was in, the work she still had to do. And then she said something that changed the room. I saved 2 soldiers that day, but I could not save myself from what that day did to me. That is not my failure. That is just reality. Trauma happens. How we deal with it, that is what matters. Josh spoke next, shared his story, his struggles, his fears. One by one, other soldiers opened up, shared their experiences, their pain, their hope. In that room, rank did not matter. Decorations did not matter. Age did not matter. What mattered was the shared understanding, the recognition, the knowledge that they were not alone. Command Sergeant Major Callahan watched from the back of the room, saw what was happening, saw soldiers helping soldiers, saw the beginning of something important. His 35-year mission was reaching its conclusion. But the work would continue long after he left, because Sarah Mitchell and soldiers like her would carry it forward. 1 week before Callahan's retirement, Frank Mitchell returned to Fort Carson, not as an inspector, as family. He took Sarah and Maria to dinner. Off base, small restaurant, private. It was awkward at first. Years of estrangement could not be erased in one evening. But it was a start. Frank talked about their father, about the relationship he wished he had appreciated while Thomas was alive, about the regrets that had eaten at him for years. Sarah and Maria listened, shared their own memories, their own grief, their own wishes for what could have been. By the end of the evening, they were not healed, but they were healing. Frank made a promise to stay in contact, to show up, to be the family he should have been all along. And for the first time in 7 years, Sarah believed him. That night, she called Josh, checked in, made sure he was okay. He was, attending therapy, talking to his wife, working through the trauma instead of burying it. Better some days than others, he said, but better. That was enough. Better was enough. Progress was enough. Sarah hung up, sat in her apartment, thought about the past 4 months, about everything that had changed. She thought about her uncle, about reconciliation, about second chances. She thought about Josh, about peer support, about helping others heal. She thought about Command Sergeant Major Callahan, about mentorship, about legacy. She thought about her father, about his letter, about his wisdom reaching across death to heal his family. And she thought about herself, about the ghost she carried, about the work still ahead. The medals on her chest told stories, stories of combat and courage and sacrifice. But they also told stories of survival, of resilience, of finding purpose beyond the fire. Sarah Mitchell was learning that the hardest battles were not always fought with weapons. Sometimes they were fought with vulnerability, with honesty, with the courage to ask for help and the strength to offer it. The war was not over. The ghost remained. The weight persisted. But she was not carrying it alone anymore. And that made all this difference. 6 weeks after the first peer support session, the program had grown beyond anything Command Sergeant Major Callahan had imagined. What started as 5 soldiers meeting in a small conference room had become 23 veterans gathering twice weekly. Active duty, reserves, retirees, young combat veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, older veterans from different eras, all finding common ground and shared experience. Sarah Mitchell led the sessions with quiet confidence. She had learned to balance vulnerability with leadership, to share her struggles without making them the focus, to facilitate conversations that allowed others to open up, to recognize when someone needed professional help beyond what peer support could provide. Dr. Helen Richardson attended every session, observing, guiding, providing the clinical expertise that complemented Sarah's lived experience. Together, they made an effective team. But it was the veterans themselves who made the program work. Their willingness to share, their courage to admit weakness, their commitment to helping each other heal. Josh Ramirez had become Sarah's unofficial assistant. He attended every session, shared his story repeatedly, helped new members feel comfortable. His transformation over 6 weeks was remarkable. The hollow look had faded, the hypervigilance remained but was manageable. He slept better, fought less with his wife, found purpose in helping others navigate what he had survived. And then there was Tyler Hayes, 22 years old, or corporal, infantry, back from Afghanistan 3 months, struggling harder than anyone else in the group. Tyler sat in the back during sessions, arms crossed, expression guarded. He listened but rarely spoke. When he did, his words were clipped, defensive. Sarah recognized the pattern. Tyler was where Josh had been 6 weeks earlier, where she had been before starting therapy, at the edge, looking into the darkness, uncertain whether to step back or jump. After the 4th session, Sarah approached him. "Tyler, can we talk?" "About what, ma'am?" "About whatever is keeping you from engaging with this group." "I am engaging. I show up every time." "Your body shows up. Your mind is somewhere else." Tyler's jaw tightened. His eyes went hard. "With respect, ma'am, you do not know what is in my mind." "You are right, I do not. But I know what it looks like when someone is drowning. And you are drowning, Corporal." "I am fine." Sarah sat down on the bench beside him, spoke quietly. No rank, no authority, just one veteran to another. "Tyler, I have said those exact words 100 times. I am fine. I can handle it. I do not need help. All lies I told myself because admitting the truth felt like admitting defeat. He said nothing, but his posture shifted slightly, less defensive, more listening. What happened over there, in Afghanistan? Tyler stared at the ground, silent. Sarah waited, did not push, just sat, present, patient. Finally, he spoke. My squad got hit, IED followed by ambush. Classic complex attack. We lost 3 guys. My best friend died in my arms. I could not stop the bleeding. Could not save him. His voice cracked. He kept asking me to tell his mom he loved her. Kept saying he was sorry, like it was his fault, like getting blown up was something he chose. Sarah knew that pain, knew the weight of last words, knew the burden of promises made to dying soldiers. Did you tell his mother? Tyler nodded, went to the funeral, looked her in the eye, told her what he said. She hugged me, thanked me for being there with him, for holding him. He wiped his eyes roughly. But I should have saved him, ma'am. I am a combat lifesaver. I had training, I had supplies, I should have done something more. Should have tried harder. Should have been faster. Tyler, sometimes there is nothing more to do. Sometimes the wounds are too severe. Sometimes we lose people despite our best efforts. That is not your failure. Then why does it feel like failure? Why do I see his face every night? Why do I hear him asking me to tell his mom over and over until we cannot sleep? Because you loved him, because you carry him with you, because grief is the price we pay for connection. Sarah paused. Let that settle. Tyler, guilt and grief can coexist. You can feel guilty about surviving while also honoring his memory by living. Those two things are not contradictory. How do you honor someone by being broken? You honor them by getting help, by healing, by becoming the person they would want you to be, not by destroying yourself with guilt. Tyler was crying now, not hiding it, just letting it come. I do not know how to do that, ma'am. Do not know how to let go of the guilt. It is the only thing keeping me connected to him. That is not true. Your memories keep you connected. Your love keeps you connected. The guilt is just weight, and weight can be shared. Sarah stood. Next session, I want you to tell his story, not to the whole group if you are not ready, but to someone, to Josh, to me, to anyone who will listen and understand. What good will that do? It will make the story real instead of a nightmare. It will give voice to your pain instead of letting it eat you alive. It will start the process of carrying him forward instead of dragging him behind you. Tyler looked up at her, eyes red, face wet, but something had shifted. Some wall had cracked. Okay, I will try. That is all any of us can do, Corporal. Try. And try again tomorrow. And keep trying until it gets easier. Over the following weeks, Tyler opened up. Slowly at first, then more fully, he told his friend's story, shared the guilt and grief and anger. Let others carry some of the weight. His friend's name was Marcus. Private First Class Marcus Chen, 20 years old, from San Francisco. Loved basketball, talked constantly about the restaurant his family owned, dreamed of going to culinary school when he got out. Tyler told the group how Marcus had saved his life 2 weeks before the attack that killed him. How Marcus had spotted an IED that Tyler had walked right past. How Marcus had yanked him backward just as the pressure plate clicked. How they had both laughed afterward, shaking from adrenaline, thanking whatever God watched over stupid infantrymen. 2 weeks later, Marcus died in Tyler's arms, blown apart by a different IED. One they did not see, one that caught them both but killed only one. The group listened. Josh knew what it felt like to burn. William knew what it felt like to lose friends in combat. Sarah knew what it felt like to hold dying soldiers. Danny Morrison, now a regular attendee, knew what it felt like to carry survivor's guilt. They did not tell Tyler it would be okay, did not promise the pain would go away, did not offer empty platitudes. They just sat with him in the pain, acknowledged it, validated it, showed him he was not alone. After one particularly difficult session, William pulled Tyler aside. Son, I lost my best friend in Vietnam. Name was Jimmy Rodriguez. We grew up together, joined together, served together. I held him when he died. Gunshot wound, bled out before the medevac arrived. William's voice was steady. Decades had given him distance, but not absolution. I carried guilt about that for 50 years. Thought I could have saved him if I had been faster, smarter, better. The guilt ate at me, destroyed my marriage, alienated my kids, nearly killed me. Tyler listened, seeing his own future in this old man's past. What changed? Tyler asked. I finally understood something. Jimmy did not die for me to destroy myself with guilt. He died because war is brutal and random, and sometimes good men die for no reason at all. Honoring him means living well, not punishing myself. William put a hand on Tyler's shoulder. Your friend Marcus, he saved your life 2 weeks before he died. You think he would want you to waste that life on guilt? Or would he want you to live, really live, for both of you? Tyler cried then, weeks of suppressed grief finally breaking through. William held him. This old warrior and this young soldier, separated by 50 years, united by identical pain. The group embraced him. Veterans who understood, who had lost friends, who carried similar burdens. They did not try to fix him. They just stood beside him, proof that survival was possible, that healing was possible, that life continued even when it felt like it should not. 3 weeks later, Tyler brought something to the session. A photograph. Marcus in full gear, smiling, giving a thumbs up, taken the day before he died. Tyler showed it to the group. I want you all to know his name. Marcus Chen. He was my brother. He saved my life. He deserves to be remembered. Not just by me, by all of us. Sarah stood, walked to the front of the room, took the photograph. We will remember him, Tyler. We will carry his memory forward. That is what we do. We carry each other, living and dead, past and present. That is the brotherhood that never ends. She placed the photograph on a table at the front of the room, a memorial, a reminder. Over the following weeks, other veterans brought photographs, other names, other faces of the fallen. The table became a shrine, a place where the dead were honored, where their names were spoken, where their sacrifices were remembered. And in that remembering and that honoring, the living found a way to keep going. During one session, something unexpected happened. An older man walked into the room, late 60s or early 70s, wearing a Vietnam veteran's ball cap, moving slowly but with purpose. Sarah paused the session. Sir, can I help you? The man looked around the room, at the circle of veterans, at the younger faces marked by combat and trauma. I heard about this group, heard you were helping soldiers deal with coming home. I thought maybe you could help an old soldier too. Sarah glanced at Dr. Richardson, received a slight nod. Of course, please join us. What is your name? William Turner, Master Sergeant, retired, 101st Airborne, Vietnam, 68 through 71. A few veterans shifted, made space. William sat down carefully. His hands trembled slightly. His eyes held the same shadows Sarah had seen in every combat veteran she knew. Master Sergeant Turner, welcome. This is a peer support group for veterans dealing with combat trauma. All eras, all branches, no judgment, just shared experience and mutual support. William nodded slowly. I have needed something like this for 50 years, just never knew it existed. Never thought I deserved it. Why not? Sarah asked gently. Because I came home. Because I survived when so many others did not. Because I spent 5 decades pretending I was fine when I was dying inside. The room was silent. Every veteran present understood exactly what he meant. William continued, voice shaking but determined. My son joined the Army 10 years ago, deployed to Iraq, came home changed. I did not know how to help him, did not know what to say, because I never dealt with my own issues, never talked about Vietnam, just buried it and drank and pushed everyone away. He looked at Sarah. He killed himself 3 years ago. My boy, my son, because he could not live with what he had seen, because I did not know how to reach him, because I was too broken to show him that healing was possible. Tears streamed down William's weathered face. I do not want any other father to lose a son the way I did. Do not want any other veteran to carry this weight alone the way I have. So if you will have me, if an old man can learn new ways, I would like to be part of this. Sarah stood, walked over to William, extended her hand. Master Sergeant Turner, it is an honor to have you here, and I am sorry for your loss. William shook her hand. His grip was still strong despite his age. Thank you, Captain. Over the next month, William became a fixture in the group. His presence bridged generations. When younger veterans talked about their struggles, William shared his own. 50 years later, the details were different, but the pain was the same. He talked about ambushes in the jungle, about friends who died, about the screaming and the blood and the constant fear, about coming home to protests and contempt instead of support, about burying his trauma so deep that it poisoned everything good in his life. But he also talked about hope, about finally seeking help at 72 years old, about starting therapy, about learning that it was never too late to heal, about wishing he had done it decades earlier, but grateful to be doing it now. His story impacted the younger veterans profoundly. If this man who had carried his weight for 5 decades could still find healing, then maybe they could too. Maybe it was not too late. Maybe they were not beyond help. Tyler particularly connected with William. They often sat together after sessions, talking quietly. Tyler sharing his guilt about his friend, William sharing his regrets about his son. 2 generations, same pain, finding comfort in mutual understanding. One evening after a session, William approached Sarah privately. "Captain, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Master Sergeant. Your program. This work you are doing, it is saving lives. You know that, right?" Sarah shrugged uncomfortably. "I am just facilitating conversations. The veterans themselves are doing the real work." William shook his head. "No, ma'am, you are doing more than that. You are creating a space where we can be vulnerable, where we can admit we are struggling, where we can ask for help without shame. That did not exist for my generation, and because it did not exist, my son is dead." His voice broke, but he continued. "What you are building here matters. Matters more than medals or missions or any single combat action. This is the fight that happens after the war, and it is just as important." Sarah felt tears welling up. This old warrior's words hit deeper than any award citation ever had. "Thank you, Master Sergeant. That means everything." William patted her shoulder gently. "Your father would be proud of you, Captain. Very proud." Sarah started, looked at him sharply. "How did you know about my father?" William smiled sadly. "I knew General Mitchell. Met him in Afghanistan in '09. I was there as a contractor. Older guy trying to serve one more time. He was a good man. Talked to everyone. Treated the lowest private with the same respect as a colonel. I heard about his death. Tragic loss." He paused. "You have his eyes, his bearing, but you have something he never had. You have learned to carry the weight and still ask for help. That is wisdom he would have valued." Sarah hugged him. This old soldier who had lost so much, who had suffered so long, who was finally finding peace. And in that moment, she understood the full scope of what they were building. Not just a support group for recent veterans, but a bridge across generations, a way for all veterans from all eras to finally come home. 2 weeks before his retirement, Command Sergeant Major Callahan gathered Sarah, Dr. Richardson, and Lieutenant Colonel Hartley in his office. "The program works," he said without preamble. "We have 25 regular participants. Attendance is consistent. We are seeing measurable improvement in soldier wellness. Several participants have returned to full duty who were on the verge of medical separation. This is exactly what I hoped for." Hartley nodded. "Division Command has noticed. They want to expand it, make it permanent, fund it properly. But they need someone to coordinate it, someone with credibility and experience." All eyes turned to Sarah. She knew what was coming, had known it was inevitable, but hearing it made it real. "Captain Mitchell," Dr. Richardson said, "Division wants to create a new position. Regional Peer Support Coordinator. You would oversee programs across multiple installations, train other facilitators, develop curriculum, work directly with VA and mental health services." Sarah looked at Callahan. "Sergeant Major," he smiled. "This is your mission now, Captain. I started it. You are going to carry it forward." "What about my platoon?" "Lieutenant Colonel Hartley will reassign someone to take over maintenance operations. Your new assignment will be full-time peer support coordination." Sarah felt overwhelmed, excited, terrified. "Sir, I am still dealing with my own issues, still in therapy, still learning how to manage my own trauma. How can I coordinate a regional program?" Dr. Richardson leaned forward. "Sarah, that is exactly why you are the right person. You are not pretending to have all the answers. You are not claiming to be healed. You are showing that healing is a journey. That is authentic. That is what other veterans need to see." Callahan added his voice. "I have spent 35 years in this Army. I have seen a lot of programs come and go. Most fail because they are run by people who do not understand. You understand. You have lived it. You are living it. That credibility cannot be manufactured." Sarah looked around the room at these leaders who believed in her, who trusted her with something important, something that could save lives. "When do I start?" Hartley smiled. "Immediately. You will be promoted to major next month, assigned to division headquarters. You will have staff, resources, a real mission." Sarah took a deep breath, let it out slowly. "Then I accept. Thank you for this opportunity." After the meeting, Callahan asked her to stay behind. They sat in his office, the same place where they had first met 7 months ago. Sarah remembered that day, how uncertain she had felt, how lost. You have come a long way, Captain. So have I, Sergeant Major, thanks to you. Callahan shook his head. No, you did the work. I just showed you where to start. He pulled out a folder, handed it to her. My successor is a good man, but he is not me. You will need to build your own relationship with him. Establish your own credibility. This folder contains everything I have learned about running support programs. My successes, my failures, lessons I learned the hard way. Consider it a final briefing. Sarah took the folder, felt the weight of it, both physical and symbolic. Sergeant Major, I do not know if I can do this without your guidance. Yes, you can, but you will not have to. I am retired, not dead. You have my number. You need advice, you call me. Anytime. He stood, extended his hand. It has been an honor serving with you, Captain Mitchell. Sarah stood, shook his hand, then pulled him into an embrace. Thank you for everything, for believing in me, for showing me that service does not end when the shooting stops, for teaching me that the hardest battles are fought with compassion, not weapons. Callahan returned the embrace. This young officer who had become like a daughter to him, who had given purpose to his final months of service, who would carry forward what he had started. Make me proud, Sarah. I will do my best. Command Sergeant Major Robert Callahan's retirement ceremony took place on a crisp October morning. The entire battalion formed up, dress uniforms, perfect alignment, the pomp and tradition of military ceremony. But this was more than routine. Callahan was beloved, respected. His 35 years of service had touched thousands of soldiers. Today was about honoring that legacy. The formation stood at attention as the color guard marched forward. American flag, Army flag, unit colors, the sharp crack of boots on pavement, the flutter of flags in mountain breeze, the silent power of tradition. Lieutenant Colonel Hartley gave the official remarks, spoke about Callahan's distinguished career, his combat deployments, his leadership, his dedication to soldiers. But the words felt insufficient. How do you summarize 35 years in a 5-minute speech? Then came something unexpected. Hartley invited soldiers to share brief testimonies, to say what Callahan meant to them. Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb stepped forward first. Sergeant Major Callahan saved my career. 10 years ago, I was struggling, drinking too much, fighting with my wife, about to get chaptered out. He pulled me aside, did not judge, did not lecture, just listened, then helped me get the help I needed. I have been sober 9 years now, still married, still serving, because he cared enough to intervene. Webb saluted Callahan, returned to formation. Private Danny Morrison spoke next, younger, less experienced, but equally sincere. When I first got here, I was stupid, arrogant, thought I knew everything. Sergeant Major Callahan taught me that real strength is not being tough. It is being honest, being vulnerable, being willing to learn. He changed how I see leadership, changed how I see service. Thank you, Sergeant Major. One by one, soldiers came forward, each with a story, each with gratitude. The testimonies painted a picture that official remarks never could, of a leader who cared, who listened, who saw potential in struggling soldiers when others saw problems. Then Josh Ramirez stepped forward, holding his daughter Lily, the little girl who existed because Sarah Mitchell had saved her father's life, because Callahan had built a program that helped Josh learn to live again. Sergeant Major, I was not going to make it. The trauma was winning. I was losing myself. Then Captain Mitchell started the peer support program, the program you created, the program that gave me tools to heal. Josh's voice broke. My daughter will grow up with a father because of what you built. She will never know how close she came to not having me, but I will know, and I will make sure she knows your name, knows what you did, knows that service means taking care of each other. The formation was silent except for the wind, dozens of hardened soldiers fighting back tears. Finally, William Turner stepped forward, the 72-year-old Vietnam veteran, moving slowly but with purpose. His voice carried across the formation. Sergeant Major Callahan, I spent 50 years in darkness, 50 years thinking I was beyond help, 50 years destroying everything good in my life because I did not know healing was possible. He paused, gathered himself. Your program gave me hope. At 72 years old, you showed me it was not too late. And because of that, I got to make peace with my demons. got to reconnect with my surviving children, got to finally honor my son's memory by healing instead of destroying myself. William saluted. Precise. Military bearing unchanged by age. Thank you for your service, Sergeant Major. All 35 years of it, but especially this last year, when you built something that will save lives for generations. The testimonies concluded, but their impact lingered. This was not just a retirement. This was a celebration of a life spent in service, a career dedicated to caring for soldiers in ways big and small. But it was Major General Patricia Foster, division commander, who surprised everyone. She had come personally to preside over the retirement, a two-star general attending an NCO ceremony. That spoke volumes about Callahan's impact. General Foster took the podium. Command Sergeant Major Callahan, I have been in this Army for 30 years. I have served with hundreds of senior NCOs, but I have never met one who understood the mission quite like you do. She paused. Let that sink in. Most NCOs focus on standards, discipline, training. Those things matter. But you understood that our mission is not just combat readiness. It is caring for soldiers. All of them. The broken ones, the struggling ones, the ones everyone else writes off. Your peer support initiative is groundbreaking. It is changing how we approach veteran mental health. Divisions across the Army are watching what happens here, studying what you built, preparing to replicate it. General Foster looked directly at Callahan. You spent 35 years preparing soldiers for war. In your final year, you taught us how to help them after. That may be your greatest contribution. The formation erupted in applause, rare at a military ceremony, but no one cared about protocol. This was earned. When the applause died down, Callahan stepped to the podium. He looked out at the formation, at faces he knew, soldiers he had mentored, officers he had guided, veterans he had helped heal. 35 years ago, I joined this Army for the wrong reasons. I joined to understand my father, to walk in his footsteps, to see what he had seen. He took a breath. My father was a Vietnam veteran. 3 tours, infantry. He came home broken. The Army gave him no tools to heal. His family watched him suffer. He died at 52, haunted by a war no one understood, destroyed by wounds no one acknowledged. I spent 3 decades trying to understand him, trying to see through his eyes, trying to feel what he felt. Callahan's voice strengthened. I finally understand, and the hardest part was not the combat. It was carrying it afterward, alone in silence, pretending everything was fine when the ghosts were eating him alive. I joined this Army to understand my father. I stayed to make sure no other soldier suffers the way he did, to make sure no other family watches their veteran disappear into darkness. He looked at Sarah, standing at attention in the front row, newly promoted to major, ready to take over the mission. Major Mitchell embodies what I have preached. She served with valor in combat. Now she serves with compassion in peace. Both require courage. Both matter. Callahan addressed the entire formation. To the young soldiers, learn from those who came before. Their scars are your lessons. Do not be too proud to ask for help. Do not carry weight that can be shared. To the veterans, your wars may have ended, but your service continues. Guide those who follow. Share your wisdom. Light the way. His voice caught slightly. Service is not a job. It is an identity. It does not end when you take off the uniform. It transforms. You find new ways to serve, new missions, new purposes. He looked at Sarah again. Major Mitchell, I am passing you the torch. Carry it forward. Light the way for others. Build something that lasts beyond both of us. Sarah came to attention, saluted sharply. Callahan returned the salute, then did something unexpected. He removed his command sergeant major rank from his patrol cap, walked down from the podium, stood before Sarah. This rank represents 35 years of service, 35 years of learning, 35 years of caring for soldiers. He placed it in her hand. You carry the mission now, not the rank, but the responsibility, the commitment, the promise to never leave a soldier behind, especially the ones fighting invisible battles. Sarah's eyes glistened. She took the rank, held it carefully. I promise, Sergeant Major, I will honor your example. Callahan embraced her, uncle to niece, mentor to student, one generation to the next. The formation erupted in applause again. This time, no one stopped them. After the ceremony, there was a reception, food, music, stories, veterans from decades of service coming together to honor one of their own. William Turner sought out Callahan. The two old warriors shook hands. Sergeant Major, what you built here saved my life. At 72 years old, you gave me hope I thought was gone forever. Callahan gripped his hand firmly. Master Sergeant Turner, you gave our young veterans something more important than hope. You gave them perspective. You showed them that survival is possible, that healing is possible, even after decades of pain. Thank you for your service, both then and now. Tyler Hayes approached next. Sober, clear-eyed, healthier than he had been in months. Sergeant Major, I was not going to make it. I was planning to end things. Then I came to that first session, heard Captain Mitchell talk about her struggles, heard Josh talk about his, realized I was not alone. He paused, composed himself. You saved my life, Sergeant Major, and I am going to pay it forward. Going to help other soldiers the way you helped me. Callahan put a hand on Tyler's shoulder. Corporal, you saved yourself. You showed up. You did the work. You asked for help. That is courage. Josh Ramirez joined them, his 2-year-old daughter in his arms, his wife beside him. Sergeant Major, this is Lily, my daughter. She exists because Captain Mitchell saved my life, because you created a program that helped me learn to live again. Callahan looked at the little girl. Bright eyes, big smile, completely unaware that her existence was a miracle, a testament to courage and intervention in the refusal to give up. She is beautiful, Specialist Ramirez. Take good care of her. I will, Sergeant Major. And when she is old enough, I will tell her about you, about Captain Mitchell, about the people who made sure she had a father. As the reception continued, Callahan found a quiet moment alone, looked out at the mountains surrounding Fort Carson, thought about his journey, 35 years, so many soldiers, so many stories, so many lives touched. He thought about his father, about the man who had haunted his entire career, about the wounds that had driven him to serve, to seek understanding, to build something better. Dad, he whispered to the mountains, to the sky, to wherever his father's spirit rested. I understand now. I understand what you carried. I understand why it crushed you. I understand that you needed help that did not exist. A single tear rolled down his cheek. But it exists now because of you, because your suffering taught me that silence kills, that isolation destroys, that veterans need connection and support and the knowledge that they are not alone. Your pain was not wasted, Dad. It inspired a mission, a program, a way forward for all the soldiers who come after. Thank you for that. Thank you for your sacrifice, both the one you made in Vietnam and the one you made afterward, struggling alone so I could learn to help others do better. The wind picked up, rustled through the trees. For just a moment, Callahan felt his father's presence. Approval, pride, peace. His 35-year mission was complete, but the work would continue. 6 months later, Major Sarah Mitchell stood in a conference room at Ramstein Air Base, Germany. Before her sat 30 officers and senior NCOs from installations across Europe, division commanders, battalion leaders, mental health professionals, all gathered to learn about the peer support program that had started at Fort Carson. Sarah was nervous. This was the biggest briefing of her career. The success or failure of this presentation would determine whether the program expanded or remained limited to a few installations. She had spent weeks preparing, rehearsing, gathering data, building the case. But standing here now, facing these skeptical leaders, she felt the weight of responsibility. Lives depended on what happened in the next hour. She took a deep breath, began. My name is Major Sarah Mitchell. 3 years ago, I was a combat captain struggling with PTSD, having nightmares, avoiding helicopters, barely holding myself together. I thought asking for help meant admitting weakness, thought I had to carry everything alone. The room was silent, listening. Some faces showed surprise. A field-grade officer admitting to mental health struggles in a professional briefing? That was unusual, dangerous even, career-limiting. But Sarah continued. Vulnerability was the foundation of what she was selling. If she could not model it, she could not ask others to embrace it. I was wrong. Getting help was the strongest thing I ever did. Stronger than any combat action. Stronger than earning any medal. Because it meant admitting vulnerability. Admitting I needed support. Admitting I could not do it alone. She clicked to the next slide. Statistical data, participation rates, outcome measures. The cold numbers that leadership needed to justify programs. This program is built on that principle. Veterans helping veterans, peer support combined with professional mental health care. creating spaces where soldiers can be honest about their struggles without fear of judgment or career consequences. She walked them through the data, participation rates, success metrics, soldiers returned to duty, suicides prevented, lives changed. At Fort Carson, we started with 5 veterans. Within 6 months, we grew to 25 regular participants. 80% reported decreased PTSD symptoms, 90% reported improved social connection, 100% reported that peer support helped more than traditional counseling alone. A colonel in the back raised his hand. Major, those are impressive numbers, but how do we know the improvement was not just time? Natural healing? How do we know the program caused the change? Sarah had expected this, had prepared for it. Sir, we tracked a control group, veterans with similar symptoms who did not participate in peer support. Their improvement rate was significantly lower. The data shows clear correlation between program participation and positive outcomes. She clicked to the next slide, comparison charts, statistical analysis. The evidence was solid. But the real impact cannot be measured in statistics. It is measured in moments. In a young corporal deciding not to end his life because he heard another veteran share similar struggles. In a 72-year-old Vietnam veteran finally seeking help after 5 decades of suffering. In families that stay together because their soldier learned healthy coping mechanisms. Sarah shared stories. William Turner, Tyler Hayes, Josh Ramirez. Not using names but painting pictures, showing the human impact behind the numbers. She told them about Tyler bringing Marcus's photograph, about the memorial table that grew each week, about veterans from different eras finding common ground, about the healing that happened when soldiers realized they were not alone. A female colonel in the front row spoke up. Her nameplate read Hernandez. Major Mitchell, I appreciate what you are presenting, but I have concerns. My installation has limited mental health resources, limited space, limited time. How do we implement this without overwhelming our already stretched systems? Sarah nodded, valid concern. She had asked the same question. Ma'am, peer support actually reduces burden on professional mental health services. Veterans who participate require fewer clinical appointments, less intensive treatment, faster return to duty. The program is force multiplier, not additional burden. She clicked to the next slide. Resource allocation, cost-benefit analysis. Implementation requires minimal resources, a trained facilitator, meeting space, 2 hours per week, no special equipment, no expensive programs, just veterans willing to share their experiences and leaders willing to support them. Colonel Hernandez looked thoughtful but not yet convinced. Sarah decided to take a risk, to share something personal, something that might tip the balance. Ma'am, can I tell you about my friend Marcus? Go ahead. Marcus was not my friend. I never met him. But I know him because a corporal named Tyler carried him for months after Marcus died, carried him in nightmares and guilt and crushing grief that was destroying Tyler's life. Sarah's voice grew quiet, intimate. The large room suddenly felt small. Tyler came to our program 6 months ago, barely hanging on, planning to end his life. He sat in the back, refused to talk. I thought we had lost him. She paused, let them feel the tension. Then a 72-year-old Vietnam veteran named William shared his story about losing his best friend in combat, about 50 years of guilt, about finally seeking help, about learning that honoring the dead meant living well, not destroying yourself. Tyler heard that, realized he was not alone, realized healing was possible, started to open up, started to heal. Sarah looked directly at Colonel Hernandez. Today, Tyler is helping other veterans, leading sessions, sharing his story, saving lives by showing that survival is possible. That happened because a program existed, because a space existed, because we said veterans matter enough to invest 2 hours per week in their healing. The room was completely silent. Then she showed them something unexpected. A video, filmed specifically for this briefing. Command Sergeant Major Callahan's face appeared on the screen. Recorded 2 weeks earlier, he spoke directly to the camera, to the leaders watching. His words carried the weight of 35 years, the wisdom of experience, the urgency of someone who understood what was at stake. When the video ended, Sarah let the silence breathe, then spoke quietly. Command Sergeant Major Callahan retired 6 months ago after 35 years of service. He spent his final year building this program. Not for recognition, not for awards, But because his father died from wounds that no one acknowledged, wounds that destroyed him because support did not exist, Callahan built this so no other veteran suffers that way, so no other family watches their soldier disappear into darkness, so no other father loses his son to wounds that could have been healed. She looked around the room, made eye contact with each leader. I am asking you to bring this program to your installations, to give your soldiers the support they deserve, to acknowledge that serving in combat changes people, and that helping them adjust afterward is not weakness, it is wisdom. Another hand raised, a one-star general, name tag read Morrison. Major Mitchell, I commanded a brigade in Afghanistan, lost soldiers to combat, lost more to suicide after we came home. I have been looking for solutions for years. This sounds promising, but I need to know it is sustainable. What happens if you leave? If Callahan is not there to mentor you, does the program collapse? Sarah smiled. This was the question that mattered most. Sir, sustainability is built into the model. We train veteran facilitators, multiple people at each installation who can lead sessions. The program is not dependent on any single person. It is a system, a culture, a way of caring for veterans that becomes part of how the unit operates. She clicked to final slide. Command Sergeant Major Callahan did not build this for himself. He built it to last, to grow, to spread across the Army and beyond. His vision was never about one program at one installation. It was about changing how we care for veterans everywhere. General Morrison nodded slowly. I am in. My division will implement this. One by one, other leaders spoke up. Voice support, committed resources, asked questions about implementation. By the end, 20 installations had committed, 20 commanders had pledged resources, 20 communities of veterans would soon have access to peer support. Sarah felt exhausted, exhilarated, overwhelmed. After everyone left, she sat alone in the empty conference room, called Callahan. He answered on the second ring. How did it go? We got 20 installations, Sergeant Major. 20. The program is expanding across Europe. Callahan's joy was audible through the phone. Outstanding, Major. I knew you could do it. I just showed them what you built. No, you showed them what it became, what it grew into. That is your contribution. They talked for a few more minutes, discussed logistics, planning, challenges ahead. Before hanging up, Callahan said something that stayed with Sarah. You know what the best part of retirement is? What? Watching the mission continue without me. Knowing I built something sustainable, something that does not depend on any single person. That is legacy, Sarah. That is what matters. 2 weeks later, Sarah received orders, promoted to lieutenant colonel, assigned as joint regional coordinator for veteran peer support across European and African commands. Massive responsibility, enormous scope, the kind of assignment that could define a career. She called Maria, shared the news. Her sister's pride radiated through the phone. Dad would be so proud of you. I hope so. He would, Sarah. Not just for the promotion, but for what you are doing, for turning your pain into purpose, for helping others heal. That is who Dad was. That is who you have become. After hanging up, Sarah sat on her bunk in her temporary quarters at Ramstein, thought about her journey, from 17-year-old girl standing at her father's funeral to decorated combat veteran to peer support coordinator. She thought about the ghosts she carried, the nightmares that still came sometimes, the hypervigilance that never fully went away, the weight of memory and loss and survivor's guilt. But she also thought about the lives saved, the veterans helped, the families preserved, the torch passed from one generation to the next. The medals on her chest told stories, stories of fire and blood and courage under impossible circumstances. But they also told a different story now, a story about what came after, about survival and healing and service that continued beyond combat. Sarah Mitchell had learned that heroism was not just running toward danger. Sometimes it was admitting you needed help. Sometimes it was sharing your wounds so others knew they were not alone. Sometimes it was building something that lasted beyond your own service. The torch had been passed, from Callahan to Sarah, from one mission to another, from combat to compassion, from fighting enemies to fighting the darkness that came after. And Sarah would carry it forward, not alone, but surrounded by veterans who understood, who shared the weight, who proved every day that survival was possible, that healing was possible, that life continued even after the worst moments. The war was not over. The ghost remained. The weight persisted. But they were carrying it together now. across generations, across continents, across the invisible lines that separated those who had served from those who had not. And in that shared burden, in that mutual support, in that refusal to let any veteran fight alone, they found something stronger than any weapon. They found hope, they found healing, they found purpose, and they carried it forward. For all who came before, for all who would come after, for the generations of veterans who deserve better than silence and suffering. The torch was lit. The mission continued. The legacy endured. And Sarah Mitchell, daughter of a general, niece of a colonel, student of a sergeant major, would make sure it never went dark. Not on her watch. Not ever. End of part 3. The end.